Hey guys, it's Misty. I am so glad you're here with us today because we are going to be making one of my favorite patterns. This is called the Rustic Unstuffed Heart. It's done in an amigurumi style, but it's not stuffed. The stitches are tight and the yarn that we use is pretty well structured. So once you get these tight stitches in there, you can pretty much move this heart any way you want. I usually tie it off with some jute twine and hang it. I'm sure that you've seen some pictures of some of the ways that I decorate with this heart. You could also have like a floral stick and put it inside of like candy arrangements or anything like that. It's going to hold up and hold its shape. So we are going to be using a specific weight of yarn to hook ratio in order to accomplish this, okay? I've been using this Impeccable by Loops and Threads. It's a 100% acrylic yarn and it is a 4-weight medium. Now, part of how we're doing our hearts here and getting these stitches so nice and tight is this yarn recommends a 5mm hook. Now, when you're making something, let's say if you were making anything amigurumi, the advice is usually to size down on your hook in order to get those really tight stitches. So that's just what we did here. This recommends a 5mm and we are using a 3.5. Okay, if this ends up being too small, a recommendation for you, you can always use a 4. As long as you're sizing down, you know, it should be pretty good. But go as small as you can. I tried with a 3. It was okay, but it was a little uncomfortable, and I found it, I was splitting my yarn more. So I just went up a half size to a 3.5, and it worked out perfect. So let's get to it, and let me show you how to make these hearts. Right, let's get going with our hearts, and we are going to start this pattern with a magic circle. So if you need help with a magic circle, I'll link that below, and we're just going to jump right into it. So we're just going to wrap around, cross, and come around. Now, reach under, pull through, and twist. Go under that back one, and we are ready to go. Okay. Instead, we're not going to chain up here. We're going to go straight in to our first stitch, and we are going to put 6 single crochets into our ring. Okay, so let's get that. There is 1, and there is 2. All right, I'm going to stop here at number 2, and I'm going to go ahead and get a stitch marker. And I'm going to go ahead and put a stitch marker right here in my first stitch. I'm doing this because once I get around, because we didn't chain 1 here, this stitch is going to be a little bit tight to get into. And so I can use this stitch marker to sort of pull up and wiggle into that stitch, and that's going to help me some, okay? So I've done 2 stitches. Now let's do 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right, so let's tighten down our circle. Now, we are not going to tighten all the way right now. We're going to keep it just a little bit loose because, like I said, this first stitch is a little bit of a doozy to get into if it's too tight. So right here where this marker is, just slip that crochet hook right in there. Okay, we can take this out now and set it to the side, and then go ahead and remember, we're not slip stitching to join. We're actually going to crochet right back into this very first stitch. Okay, so pull through and do a single crochet. Okay, now, right now, before we forget, because we're working in a continuous round, we want to always be replacing our stitch marker at the first of every round. Okay, so that first stitch gets a stitch marker no matter what. And let's go right ahead, because this is, now we've officially started our second round. Let's go right ahead and put our second single crochet into that same stitch. Okay, now take your little pull tab here, your center pull, and go ahead now and tighten that down. Okay, now we're going to go right into the next stitch. So we are going to do 2 single crochets in every stitch around. Okay, so we've made it back to our stitch marker, and when I get to the end of the round, I like to stop then and count. So we know that we've got 2 stitches in every stitch, so we should have 12 stitches. So let's count back to our marker. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So we're right on count. All right, let's take our stitch marker out and go ahead and put our first stitch of the third round right in there, single crochet. And immediately, before we forget, replace our stitch marker. That's going to sound like a mantra by the time you're finished with this, honestly, because if you forget to put your stitch marker and you lose where your first stitch is starting, and in a continuous round, honestly, if you don't find it, you just don't know where it is. So if you forget your stitch marker in a continuous round, it's really a pain to try and figure it out. Okay, you've got to go back and count just about everything you've done to try and get to the end of it. So in the third round, what we're going to do is we've got 1 crochet in this first stitch, 1 single crochet in the first stitch, 2 single crochets in the second. Okay, so go ahead and put 2 single crochets into that next stitch, and 1 single crochet into the next, and 2 single crochets into the next, and keep going around just like that. 1 single crochet into the next, and 2 into the one after that, and I will meet you around. Okay, so we are right here at our last stitch in the round. And so this is a really good rule of thumb to go by. When you come up on your stitch marker in an increase round, if you started your round with 1 single crochet, you will end that round with 2 single crochets. The opposite is also true. If you begin with 2, you'll end with 1. I usually begin with 1 and end with 2. That's just kind of how I write my patterns. So we are now in the line that our last stitch is going to get 2 single crochets. And that puts us right on target with where we should be. So we should have 18 stitches at this point. So we are right on target. And now we are going to single crochet into that first stitch again. And right away, we're going to put our marker back. I am really harsh about putting those markers back. Okay. So, there we are, and we've done all 3 first rounds, and we've done 2 rounds of increases. These are the only increases we're going to do for right now. From now on, every round is going to just be 1 single crochet in every stitch in the round, okay? And we are going to continue with that until we have done 11 total rows. So we've already done 3 rows, right? So we have 8 more rows to go of simply 1 single crochet in every stitch of the round. And you go ahead and complete that. And on row 11, right before we finish up, I will meet you back here. Okay, we're back and we have 11 rows. Also, your piece should have turned with your pull on the inside now. So if it's not in that direction, just flip it around. So we have 11 rows now. And to count these rows, all you need to do is follow the bumps. So we've got this first one here where our round started. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So what we're going to do now is we are going to pull this really tight and make a really tight slip stitch right there. And then we're just going to bind off, pull that through, and tighten it down. Okay? Now, this is going to be piece A. I want you to take your marker that you've been using and just find a spot on there, and so that we mark this as piece A. It's just going to stay there until we join our 2 pieces together, okay? So this is piece A, and what we need to do now is we need to make another piece exactly like this piece. So make another piece, piece B, and make it just like this one, and I will meet you back around before we finish that second piece. First things first, let's acknowledge the changes that's taken place. The nails. Oh, new Valentine nails. Leave your comments below. Alright, so yeah, it's been a minute since I made this first piece. So here was our piece A that we got done with our heart, and we have it marked here with this stitch marker. We're just going to leave that there, and here is our piece B that we have done to match. Okay, so we have 11 rows in this one and 11 rows in this one. Now we're going to go ahead and take our stitch marker off of this one. We'll be putting it back on in a little while, and let's just set this up here for joining the way they're going to go together. Okay, what we're going to do, if you notice, let me take this out for a minute. What we've got going on here is we have a high point right here. Let me get you down in the frame. We have a high point right here, and we have a high point right here. See where we're like high here and then low? Where we're going to join these at is right at those 2 high points. Like those 2 high points are like, hello, my lost love. So here they go. They are going to come together like that. And this high point is going to be joining these low points over here. And it's going to mask a little bit that we have different levels going on because of our continuous round. Okay? So, to get that done, we are going to put our piece A to the back. And with our piece B here, I don't need it pulled up that much. I'm just going to pull up a little bit of the yarn here and picking up my piece A right here into this last tall stitch. The tail here that we had left over, don't worry about that. Just stuff it down in there. this last tall stitch right here, that's where we're going to be joining at, but we're going to be joining on the back side of it. So here is our crochet hook going into the back of it. And then from there, we're going to grab up this piece of yarn and pull it through that hole. Okay? And once we've done that, see, there we are, we're going to tighten down. And we're going to turn this around to where our A hook that we've got our stitch marker on is facing us. Okay? It's in the front of our little, well, you know, it looks a little weird, but it's in the front. So here we are tightened down, and now our yarn, because we've rotated our work, our yarn is now back in the back the way it's supposed to be, okay? So we're going to go straight from pulling this through here, and we're going to take our hook and we're going to go straight through the very next stitch right there, okay? And then on our back piece, we're going to go through that very next stitch on the back piece, the first step down on that piece. And we are going to grab our yarn and pull it straight through both pieces. Okay, are we clear there? Okay. We're going to pull that straight through both pieces and simply slip stitch. Oh, I split my yarn a little bit. All right, grab a hold of it. Push our little tail down in there. He's starting to get on my nerves a little bit. Okay. So now we're going to go into that very next stitch on piece A, just like that, and the very next stitch on piece B. See, here's our working yarn right here in that stitch before it, and we're going right into that next stitch, yarning over and grabbing up that loop and pulling it through to make our second slip stitch. Okay? Now we go through the next stitch and the next stitch, and we're pulling through to slip stitch right there. Then the very next one, this will be our fourth one. Split that yarn a little bit again. All right, there's our fourth one, and straight through and slip stitch. All right, now we are joined. So here is how we're going to keep up with the count on our stitches. First things first is we made 4 joins here, okay? We made 4 slip stitches. And what we have to do is we have to count around as we move around each piece, okay? So this piece was 18 stitches around, and so was this one. We had 18 stitches in each round when we were putting our the tops of our hearts together. So what we want to do is we want to, obviously 18 minus these 4 slip stitches is 14. So what we want to do is as we count around, as we go around this one, we want to count and make sure that we have a total of 14 single crochets when we go around. Then when we get to over here, we want to make sure that we have a total of 14 stitches from over here to back around. Okay, that's going to ensure that we have our stitch count right. And that's going to be very important for when we start making our decreases. So we are going to start going around, but I'm going to show you a little technique that I do as we go. When you join something like this, more than likely there's going to be a little gap that's made right there. I'm just going to reach over here and I'll show you a little bit of what I'm talking about. So on the back side of this one, you can see, oh sorry, there's white snow fuzz on there. Right here, do you see this little hole? right there. You see that? Okay. Now on this side, it's a little bit better, but it is still existent. Now, that was as good as I could get it because these stitches are tight, but I did get it at least that good. It's very unnoticeable, and when I put my jute twine through, usually I just push it right through there when I'm threading it in there, and that hole is completely non-existent then. So, I'm going to teach you the technique that I use to get that little gap hole as small as I can get it. What I do is, you see where this working yarn is. Sorry. You see where this working yarn is right here. Okay? Our first stitch is right here in the next stitch over. We are going to go into the same stitch that the working yarn is coming out of, but don't put your hook all the way through, pick up the front loop only. And then we are going to go directly into our first stitch, just like that, okay? And we're going to go draw up our loop, pull it through, and then we're going to draw through all 3 loops, okay? And that is going to be our first single crochet of the round. So that's our number 1 right there. And I'm going to put my stitch marker in and start being real bossy about always remembering to put that stitch marker in. Okay. So next we're going to go around and a single crochet in every single stitch, and I will meet you about halfway here before we start on our other piece, and show you where our count's at, okay? Okay, so I have made it around right here before we join this next piece, and I wanted to stop before we get there and make sure that we have our 14 stitches. So over here where our marker is, we're going to start counting right there because we know that's our first stitch, okay? So we've got our 14 stitches, and we are going to now do the same kind of join as we did over here. So the join on this side is just a little bit different because right here, let me get this working yarn out of the way. Right here is this large step up here where we first joined our pieces together. And if you will remember, we didn't really make a slip stitch in this. This is the piece that we pulled our yarn through before we started making our 4 slip stitches that joined our pieces. So that being said, we know that we have our first stitch is really this tall stitch right here, and then we would go into the next one would be the step down. But what we're going to do to kind of make this a easier transition is we are going to do our picking up 1 loop little trick here, okay? Only we're going to do it with the very top of our actual stitch. We're going to pick up the first loop of that actual stitch right there, okay? And we are not going to pull our yarn through. We're just going to go directly from there, and we're going to travel with this to the, look here, we're going to travel with this right down the side of that stitch and into the bottom of it, okay? So then we're going to put our hook into the bottom of that stitch down on the round below, all right? And that's where we're going to pull through, and then we've got 3 loops on our hook, and we're going to go through all 3 loops, and that is going to be stitch 1 of our join. All right. At this point, make sure that this little tail is pulled tight in there and just stuff it down in there. We're not going to fool with him anymore. All right, now this is our first stitch on the new piece. So this is where we start counting to 14. This is stitch 1. And here is stitch 2. And we are going to go all the rest of the way around, single crochets in every stitch, and I will meet you at the join. Okay, we are back right at the join, and we are just going to take out our stitch marker. Now I will advise you to make sure, go back and count that you've got your 14 stitches total. I counted with mine all the way up. We've got 14 stitches. So remove your stitch marker so that we can go into that first stitch, and we're just going to join like normal. So here is our first new stitch of the round right there. So let's put our stitch marker in, and we're going to go on from here and put 1 single crochet into every stitch around and meet back at the marker. Okay? Okay, we have made it back around to where we join with our stitch marker here, and we have 28 stitches now all the way around. It's time to start our decreases. That's going to be going down our heart, and with this heart we want it to be sort of an elongated decrease. So we are going to be doing a decrease round and then a regular round, a decrease round and then a regular round, and so on. So what we're going to do first is, let's just go ahead and move our marker out and make our first stitch. So these are single crochets. There is stitch number 1, and like always, go ahead and put your marker back. Now, that marker is going to be more and more important as we go. So we're going to make 5 single crochets and then a decrease. And we're going to do that all the way around. So after every 5th stitch, after every 5th single crochet, we will do a decrease. All right? So here is stitch 1. There's 2, 3, 4, and 5. The decrease we're going to be using is the invisible decrease. So how you do that is just like we were when we were joining and we were closing up those little gap holes. It's just like that. So we're going to take our hook, and we're going to go under the front loop only of our next stitch, and then we're going to go straight under the front loop only of the next stitch. Okay, so the next 2 stitches there, front loop only, and that's what our hook's going to look like. Okay, yarn over, pull through those 2 stitches, or those 2 loops, sorry, and then yarn over and make our single crochet. And that's our first decrease. See that? All right, now we've got 5 more stitches to go to our next one. And 5. Okay, so we are here at our last invisible decrease. And here's the thing about our stitch marker at this stage of our work. If our count is right, okay, if you've gone around here, if you had 28 stitches to start all the way around, and you have counted out your decreases exactly right, you will be left with a decrease. See these 2 stitches right here? This is where we're putting our decrease. So you will have 2 stitches left at the end of the round to make your decrease in right before you get to the stitch marker. And that will be the case in every round that we decrease, okay? If your count is right, you'll have 2 stitches left to make your decrease. If your count is off, that's when you'll know it. So you really can't get any more than just, a couple of rows done. So if you do have to pull out any stitches, you won't have to go back very far. As long as your count was right at the last time you went around with a decrease, then you don't have to go back that far. So let's go ahead and do first loop only, and then go into the very next first loop only, yarn over, pull through 2. Oh, I split that yarn again. I'm a mess today, y'all. Okay, yarn over and pull through those loops. All right, so now our next row or round is 1 single crochet in every stitch of the round, and replace that stitch marker, because you know that you do not want to lose your count now. Okay, so 1 single crochet in every stitch of the round, and I will meet you back at the join when we start our next decrease row. Okay, we're ready for our next decrease round. So go ahead and put that first single crochet into your first stitch right there, and everybody all together, put your stitch marker back. Okay, so now our round is going to be after every 4th stitch. Okay, so we're going to make 4 single crochets and then a decrease, and we're going to do that all the way around until we get back here to our marker. So we've already done our first stitch there, so let's do 2, and we should have 2 more stitches left right before we reach the marker to make our decrease in. So first loop only, draw through both, yarn over, draw through both. Okay, so our next round, it's going to be another regular round with 1 single crochet in every stitch. So replace your marker and start making your way around, 1 single crochet in every stitch, and I will meet you back before our next decrease round. All right, so we got all the way around on our regular round, and now it's time for another decrease round, and this time we are going to decrease after every 3rd stitch. So if you notice, we started with 5, and then it's 4, and now it's 3. So we are very near being finished. All right, so put your first single crochet into that first stitch and replace it. And now after every 3rd stitch, we will make a decrease. And we are right here at our stitch marker with 2 stitches left, and that is exactly the way we want to be. So we're right on target. In through the front loop, in through the next front loop, pull through both, yarn over, and pull through both loops. Okay, so let's go ahead and remove our marker and place the first stitch of our next round. Replace your marker and 1 stitch in every round, and I will meet you back. So now it's time to make decreases every second or after every second stitch. So remove our marker and go into that first one. There's our first single crochet. Put it back. And now we're going to go 2 stitches and then a decrease. So here's our invisible decrease right in there. So that's all we're doing in this round, just 2 stitches and then a decrease. All right, we are making our last regular stitch and we have 2 stitches left right before the marker. So let's put our last decrease of the round right in there. So just like every other round, after a decrease, we're going to put our marker in the next stitch, in the first stitch there, and we're going to go around one single crochet in every stitch of the round, and I will meet you back before the next decrease. Okay, so we've got our regular row put in. You can really see this starting to take shape now and getting this sort of elongated look to it. So the next decrease round is going to be every other stitch. So our last one was every 2 stitches. So this one is going to be after every 1 stitch. So there's our first stitch, stitch 1 of the round. Don't worry, we won't have to fool with our stitch marker very much longer at all, but we'll stick it back in there for right now. Okay, so now we're going to go straight into a decrease. And still we have our 2 stitches before our stitch marker. It's getting just a little bit harder to keep up with it, but it is there. So there's our first loop under our second loop. I missed some of it. There we go. Pull through both of those loops, yarn over, pull through 2, and now we have our next round, which I'm sure, as you know by now, is just a regular round of single crochets. Now we've got like a point here at this point. So let's take our stitch marker out, and what we're going to do is now every stitch is a decrease. So pick up that first loop and pick up the next first loop. Yarn over, pull through both loops, and go ahead and make your first single crochet of the round, and go ahead and put your stitch marker in there just so we'll be knowing where we're at some point. We're probably at some point I usually give up and just start sticking my hook wherever it'll go. It gets so little, but so we've got our stitch marker in there, and now we've got to find our next stitch, which is right here. Pick up our first loop only. And really, when you're to this point, just do the best you can, getting as much, and make a single crochet into the next stitch, first loop only, into the next stitch, first loop only, pulling through, making your single crochet, and let me see. Yep, that is it. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and remove our stitch marker here, okay? And what I want to do is, I've got a little bit of a stitch right here. I'm not going to go around. I'm going to pick it up from the back side right there, just anywhere you can get your hook in, okay? And I picked up that first stitch from the back, just the first loop of it, and I am just going to come right through those loops like a slip stitch, and then I'm going to tighten it down really tight here at my point. I'm going to pull through again like I'm binding off. And then I'm going to come up here, pulling really tightly, and clip that and pull it through and pull it down. Okay? That is it. That is our heart done. Now, all we need to do now is go ahead and weave in our end, and all you're really going to have to do here, it's pretty tight getting in there, so I just stick it in wherever I can get it, and go through a few, and I usually just pull it right out the side. And I don't make a big a deal. I don't usually go, you know, normally I would weave back and forth, but with a decorative piece like this, and my little tab here was short, as long as I can pull it through and get it out the side where I can cut it off, that's all there is to that. Now we're going to take our jute twine, and we're just going to measure off a little bit, literally, just eyeball it, however much you think. I'm usually not that precise when I'm making more rustic decorations. I like a little variety. I like the way that looks. So I just kind of try to keep it random. And then thread that. Now, we have covered up our holes, our joining space here pretty good. The really cool part about these hearts is how deep this V is. That's what makes these hearts look rustic. That's what gives them that rustic style, this deep break right there. So what I like to do is I like to pull that apart there, and right where I can see a little bit of gap right there, I'm not going to go right through that gap. I'm going to go just above it, and I'm going to push down the yarn above it. See how I'm doing that? I'm just going to push down the yarn above it because I'm still trying to close it and cover it. And I'm going to push straight through my heart out the other side. Pushing through about halfway. And then I'll take my yarn needle out and even up my jute twine as best I can. Again, it does not have to be perfect. I prefer things that aren't that perfect, decoratively speaking. Now, all right, now, down here, I'm going to spread my little heart right here, and I'm going to try to get pretty close inside there. You see how I'm doing that? And I'm just going to roll this around my finger, okay? And then I'm going to grab up my hook because I've got it. See how tight that is around my finger? Then I'm just going to grab up my hook because I've got it pretty tight, and I'm just going to pull that through, okay? And then keeping that knot close to the bottom, I'm going to put my fingers there and keep that knot close down. I'm going to start tugging on that jute twine and pull that knot into the splitting point of that heart. See that? Kind of shows off how deep that goes. All right, now you can either put a little knot at the top of this by doing the exact same thing, or you can leave it open so that you can tie it on to another piece of garland. I'm going to go ahead and put a knot in the end of mine just so I can show you how I do that. I leave about that much, enough to hang pretty, right? And then I'm just going to come up here and do the exact same thing. I'm going to wrap around my finger like that. I'm going to take my small hook here and I'm going to pull that through because I've got it wrapped pretty tight. And then I'm going to release it and pull straight out with it. Okay, now you can leave this little tag here on the end as long as you want. I do like to leave a little bit of it. you know, I think most people would want to cut it right down to the knot, but I like leaving a little piece of it because I just like the way that looks with the little tag on the end still, you know, kind of there. I think it just gives it a more natural rustic look. And there you go. That is our rustic unstuffed heart. So I hope you love it. I hope you decorate with it. Let me know. Let me know how you like it. Leave it down below. Anything you would do differently, let me know. I'm always open to some tips and tricks myself. And you guys, go out and do something you love today. Okay? Don't forget to take care of yourself. Until next time.